Hello, everyone. I'm Byron Connolly and I'm head of programs at Adapt. And today I'm here with Pooja Singh. And Pooja is Senior Research Analyst at Adapt. She's based in Bangalore in India and has been working at the organisation since September of 2022. Previously, Pooja spent over 5 years at Gartner with a big focus on healthcare IT. She's also held analyst roles at Bain & Co. and EvalueServe in India. Pooja, thanks for joining me and being part of this important conversation in support of International Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Byron. It's a great opportunity for me, and I think my perspective and the people that we want to talk about on this topic, it will bring a lot of value to our viewers as well. So I'm really happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely, and great to have you here. Now, Pooja, cast your mind back to 2010 when you first started studying for a Bachelor of IT degree at the
Yeah.
Jaypee Institute of Information Technology. Tell us why you chose this career path. What was it about IT that attracted you the most?
To be honest with you, 14 years ago, I was a very different person than I am today. My
Yeah.
worldview, the way I perceive the world, it was very different. So, my background, I'm from India, and unfortunately, we are a part of a society which is quite patriarchal, even till date. And I
Mm.
remember I was like, what, 18, 19 when I had to make that decision.
Yeah.
And I remember the way our surrounding is, the way people around me were, there was always this expectations that, okay, there are certain roles, certain education courses, certain programs which are good for women, right? So
Yeah.
women, oh, they should be getting into arts, or women, they should be getting into maybe courses which are easy. Do like a 3-year course, and you don't really have to give a lot of focus on doing masters.
Yeah.
And because we are a part of this patriarchal society, there was also a lot of pressure on women to prove their worth on every instance. So
Yeah.
when I made this decision before going for my engineering, in school you have to do certain selections in terms of subjects.
Yeah.
You have to pick subjects like mathematics so that you're eligible for engineering. And I remember there was just so much pressure which I think I created on myself, because the way the society was, that okay, I want to do things which are considered tough. I want to do things which are not considered for women. So I
Yeah.
remember after my 10th standard, I selected mathematics as well as biology,
Yeah.
for my higher education, because I thought, what, I want to prove my worth. If I do something more difficult, that's considered, something that men are good at doing, but women are just not worth doing. Or
Mm.
then I will be able to prove that, I'll be proving my metal, and I'll tell them that I'm good enough.
Mm.
So that time, these are the things that actually impact you and the way you think of world. Of course, my view has changed a lot now, but
Mm.
yes, I remember back then I was like, okay, this is considered to be very tough, so I'm going to be an engineer or a doctor.
Mm.
So yeah, that's how I got into it. I always had this focus that I wanted to be in the biology sciences,
Yeah.
or work in a field which has impacts on healthcare and healthcare equity. And that's why I selected my engineering in biotechnology, because that was a area where I thought, okay, we do have focus on how technology can impact the way we consume
Yeah.
a lot of services as individuals, be it your pharmaceuticals, be it having access to healthcare or having a medical plan. So
Mm.
yeah, I thought it was a good mix for me.
Mm.
So that was my thinking back then.
Absolutely. You wanted a challenge and you've certainly got it in IT. Now,
Yeah.
unlike a lot of other women, as you say, you chose a career in IT. And over the years, there's been numerous studies and articles that suggest that young women around the world naturally gravitate to the humanities and arts when selecting a career
Yeah.
STEM. Um, I mean, why do you think this is the case? Is it just that men and women are different? I mean, is it that a large proportion of men are more interested in technical subjects than women? Is that the reason that you think there is this disparity, or do you think it's more to do with, I guess, misconceptions about what women can do and what men can do?
That's actually a fantastic topic.
Mm.
In my view, if I look at men and women, and if I think of opportunity or the intellect, or let's talk about the cerebral equality, men and women both are equal in those terms. I think when we see trends like this, it has a lot to do with conditioning, right? Because throughout your age, you have been conditioned to believe certain things, to do certain things, to assign yourself into certain roles which a society or people around you have created for you,
Mm.
right? So I'll give you an example. Um, 14 years back, there is this concept that when it comes to luxury or fashion, it's a field that generally women are interested in,
Sure.
right? But let's
Just
look
like
at the
primary
reality.
school teaching or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, but let's look at the reality today. Most of the top designers across the globe are men, right?
Mm.
There are so many men who are now getting into luxury, retail, fashion. So I think a lot of these conversations, be it women navigating to arts or men being very interesting in STEM, I think a lot of it has to do with misconception and the conditioning and the roles which have been created for you. And you tend to pivot to them because you are giving this sense that this is what good looks like, this is what comfortable looks like, this is what you are meant to be. So I think with time, I think that narrative is getting changed slightly, but
Yeah.
I think it's still a long way to go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's taking a long time for that narrative to change, and it's taking a long time for people's attitudes to change. That's for sure. And of course, there are lots of activity and programs in Australia to market IT to women to address
Yeah.
the gender imbalance. I'm assuming that's the same situation in India as well. Do you have any thoughts on the efficacy of these programs, whether they work or not? And do you think that this push for diversity targets is a good thing, or maybe not so much? I think that a push for targets is you end up with people potentially in the wrong jobs. I don't think it necessarily makes sense to have 50-50 in everything. And I think you might agree with that. What are your thoughts on, firstly, the efficacy of these programs and targets, diversity targets, gender diversity targets?
Absolutely. So when I look at these programs and targets, the first thing that really comes into my mind is that, okay, organizations these days have a lot of focus, or I'll even go to an extent of saying that it's something that their peers are doing, it's something that the world is expecting from them. So they do have programs like, okay, we want to be more diverse, they'll on their website they'll have picture where you have
Yeah,
women also in the frame, you will have women of color in the frame, and
yeah,
your website you're saying you're diverse. But the question is, what's the ground reality? i
mm,
i do think that a lot of when it comes to efficacy on the of these programs, in my experience and a lot of conversations that I have had, I don't think they are very effective.
yeah,
See, diversity is one part of the entire statement. Okay, you as an organization, when we talk about being diverse, what does it mean? You as an organization support and are open to hiring people irrespective of the gender or their color or anything, right?
yeah, sure.
But being inclusive is an entirely different game. Being
Mm,
inclusive is, once you have those people as a part of your team, what opportunities do you offer them to be on the same level as others are, right?
mm,
And a lot of people often fail to distinguish between the two. And that's where the challenge comes into the picture. So
yeah,
I think right now these programs, I think it is at a very higher superficial level at times, I feel.
yeah,
But really, to be on ground, to facilitate those people to have a successful long term career where they are motivated, where they are growing, my
yeah,
question is, where are these statistics on that? I don't see a lot of them out there.
yeah. I
So,
agree with that. There's a lot of window dressing going on, perhaps.
exactly, exactly. So that's one challenge. And even when it comes to women, I'll give you an example. So let's say you have a business leader who has worked in your organization for 10 years. Okay, and 10 years is a good time somebody is giving to their career. Let's say they want to take a maternity gap, they want to extend it because, of course, they have had a baby, and, they want to bond with the baby. And it is their right to have that, spend their time with their
Yeah,
baby and be a part of their, be a very active play a very active role in their lives. Now let's say after 2 years that person wants to come back to the workforce. My question is, do they have the same opportunities before, like as before when they left for the maternity? No. Women still I mean, somebody has given 10 years and just because they took a 2-year gap, uh, they are not really welcome. They'll have to compromise on the role, on the pay, on the responsibility. Sometimes their role is restructured,
Yeah.
they are sent to certain teams where the responsibility is not high. I've seen people getting shift to non-client teams just
Mm.
because of these things. Um, there's this discrimination that they feel on the floor as well, especially, even the people who are there, a lot of people have this sentiment, oh, this person has just taken 2 year gap, but
Mm.
you don't know how much that person has contributed for 10 years of their life. And it's really hard to see organizations not being able to facilitate it.
Mm.
Even if you write it in your resume, not working for 2 years, has taken a 2 year gap, even
Mm.
the people who are shortlisting the resume, you will not be their first pick,
No,
right?
because of that gap that you have in your career there. Mm.
Exactly. And I mean, this is a negative connotation associated with that. And I
Yeah,
just don't get it. Like, it's a natural phenomenon, happens in everyone's life.
it
But
does.
why
Yeah,
are people
for
not
sure.
accepting and trying to find a solution for it?
Mm.
So yeah, that's when that's my major challenge when we talk about these programs and efficacy of these
Yeah.
programs. I think there's
Well,
a wide gap.
for sure, and I'd agree with all of those things. What have been your own personal challenges, I guess, working in a male-dominated industry? What hurdles have you had to overcome? I mean, there's a lot of women that I talk about men and their behaviors and attitudes towards women, particularly in IT. I don't know if that's been an issue for you. So you're talking there about a lot of hurdles that women have to overcome generally around the lack of these programs and activities around women in IT not really cutting through. I mean, personally, in your career working in a male-dominated industry, have there been particular hurdles that you've had to overcome? Like a lot of women that I talk about how men have to change their behaviours and attitudes towards women in IT. I've heard so many anecdotal stories on that front. Have you had that experience? Have there been any other things that other hurdles you've had to overcome throughout your career that you want to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I definitely agree on the aspect of men having to change their behavior and attitude.
Yeah,
Um, so I think as a woman, when you're working with a team or you're a part of a wider group which is highly male dominated, I think it puts a lot of pressure on you as well to prove your worth. Okay,
yeah,
so I'll give you an example. If I'm in the room and we are having a project discussion, and if I have to present my findings or make a point, I know that I have to work extra hard to make that point. Okay,
mm,
there's a constant feeling you have that people in the room are not rooting for you.
mm,
I'll be out there and say it. Okay, there's a feeling that people in the room really want you to make a mistake, so they have an opportunity to say, okay, you know what, she isn't good enough.
mm,
I'll give you an example that once happened with me. I was working for this organization, and I remember this one time. I was a new member to that company. I was like 1.5 year in the role,
mm,
and this male team lead calls me up, and it was a time for my yearly review, and he
mm.
said that your work is fine, your feedback, your client reviews, and everything is fine,
Yeah.
but we have some issues with your behavior. And I said, with my behavior, like I was a little taken back because I was highly
Oh, really?
collaborative. Like my scores in terms of collaboration or my scores in terms of helping people in my team being there, they were all really high. And I said, okay, where is this coming from? And he goes like, there are a couple of senior leadership men, and there is this group culture, bro culture in IT, which is already there. And just because I'm not a part of their group, or I don't really laugh on their jokes and facilitate those fun conversations as
Yeah.
per them, that's why
Yeah.
I'm considered a little cold and I have an attitude problem.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean,
That's
is
not.
this a kind of like, is this the kind of feedback you give to someone in their yearly performance review, telling them that you're very good at your work, but just a couple of people think because you don't laugh at their jokes or interact with them, you have an attitude problem.
No, which is
So
totally
I
irrelevant to anything. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, a lot of these instances have happened, and that's when, and I'll come back to my previous point. That's where you have a lot of pressure on yourself because you
Mm.
always think you are in a room where people are just wanting for you to make that mistake.
To make a mistake. Yeah.
And I can tell you, yes, as a woman, you want to fight it. As a woman, you want to be as strong.
Mm,
when it comes to facing this situation. But I've also seen a lot of women, really talented, wonderful women, really getting tired of this stuff. And many times, what options do they have? They'll either request a change of team, okay, or they eventually quit the job and join a new company because you can't change these things. And who do you really go and complain about to these things, right?
mm,
I mean, you can't go and say that, okay, this is an HR issue. No, they won't tag it as an HR issue, right? So
mm.
yeah, it's very frustrating at one point, and it's very exhausting.
Particularly if you're dealing with senior people and there's a real difference in experience there and they've got more I guess gravitas in the organization, so there's not a lot you can do. You don't want to make complaints about senior people that have said something you don't like, and it must be quite a difficult situation. I can understand that. I can very much understand.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have had experiences where my colleagues and my work colleagues, if they have had a tough situation with a very senior male member of the team,
Mm,
and the situation is completely out of their behaviors and attitudes towards women, and
mm,
even if they go and raise it to the HR, there have been instances that, okay, the HR will say, yes, we'll look into this. They'll probably have that conversation with the senior leader. Of course, they're not going to take action against the senior leader because he's a big business leader, he's managing
sure.
clients and revenues.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what there are subtle things they'll start doing. They'll take you off better projects. You
Sure.
won't be given the opportunities which you were given earlier. uh,
Mm,
there are cases where I've even seen restructuring happen, or you will suddenly start getting, you will start seeing lower project scores suddenly, and there will be no explanation for this, and
yeah.
everything will ultimately come and say, oh, we don't think your performance was better now.
Mm,
So, all these things happening, and you can't really do anything about it. You just can't. So you either deal with it or you move out if you're not happy with it. So
mm.
that's the kind of approach that's out there.
Yeah, and I suspect a lot of women get turned off by that, and I can understand that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the type of people that are in IT. IT tends to attract people who are very neurodiverse, which is a good thing because it builds strong teams. If you have a team of people and their brains all work differently, it can be quite a
Yeah.
fantastic thing, right? Because you can come at problems from all different angles, and it's great. But do you think this might be an issue for some women who perhaps may have more typical personalities?
Could you elaborate on the typical personality, as in, like, yeah,
Yeah,
I
someone
just want
that's
to.
neurodiverse. So someone like, for instance, somebody might have be not as good at communications. They may be on the autism spectrum. They
Okay.
may be very focused on particular topics. Whereas someone else might be more typical, might be more outgoing, a little bit of a better communicator. So what I'm
Yeah.
saying is that there are very diverse people in organizations. And IT, you have a lot of people who are very good with data. Um,
Yeah.
have a real, they're real sticklers um, for making sure that everything is I guess I'm trying to look for the word here, that they have real attention to detail, right? Really, really granular attention to detail. Where there are other people who perhaps are a bit more fly by the seat of their pants. They just take things as they come. They don't have that
Yeah.
quite that attention to detail. And when you get two people who have very different personalities like that working together, it can be problematic. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that IT does attract quite neurodiverse people who are very good at coding, very good at that type of thing. I guess that's always been a situation where technology in the past has been viewed by a lot of people as a bunch of people sitting in a back room cutting code and not communicating with anybody else. That's
Yeah.
changed so much in recent years, and you're getting more people coming into IT teams who are good at marketing IT. They're great communicators. They're good at communicating the value of technology across organizations. So you get different people from different sides of the fence. And I think maybe a lot of women would have the view that, okay, IT's, full of geeks, men who are, some of them, they have very different personalities. They're not good communicators. But that's not necessarily the case anymore. And I think maybe that puts some women off. I guess it's
Yes.
saying.
Yeah, I think that is changing. So, this is happening in very small proportion. But we also have a lot of like we are seeing women and both men from non-STEM backgrounds also being a part
Yeah,
of tech companies, right?
yeah,
So let's look at a lot of successful tech companies which are out there. You have a core IT team. Yes, they may be very good when it comes to their skills as a developer, as a coder, but that's just one part of the puzzle. If you see a lot of organizations these days, they want to talk about their solutions, they want to market their solution, they have a very solid sales teams which is out there positioning their solutions. You
yeah.
have roles like product marketers, product managers, which is facilitating out there, right? So I do see a lot of opportunities where non-STEM people are also getting into IT and they're having a lot of success out there. Yes, years like there was a time, and I know in certain countries or depending on the size of the company, also things will change.
Mm.
But yes, the perception that IT is all coding and you know um, you need to be very good at mathematics,
Mm.
languages, and being a geek. I think that perception is now changing. There's so much out there that technology companies are now looking at. Coding, developing, software development is just one part of the puzzle, but there's a lot more that goes outside of it, and that's evolving.
Yeah, for sure. But there's still that perception, that software developers sit in a room and they don't talk to anybody and they're in their own little world. And it's unfortunate because
I think the
it's not the
way
70s and 80s anymore, right? It's 2024. That perception needs to change.
the perception certainly needs to change. I think the perception is also coming from the fact that who are the people who are occupying these roles? Okay, so let's say when we talk about somebody being a coder or a developer, people hire people from engineering background. Okay, now let's look at the people who are getting into engineering background. So if I look at India and the statistics, there are only 20 to 30% of the classroom cohort in engineering is women. It's still between 20 to 30%. Rest of them are men. So it's the way we are feeding into the entire education when it comes to engineering, and then those engineers being a part of these organizations, right?
Mm.
So the way this entire trend and perception and this entire pattern is still in existence is because it's happening at a very early stage, and the feeding mechanism to this hasn't really changed a lot, right? So that's why these misconceptions are, I wouldn't even call it misconception, to an extent it is in reality, but yeah, that's why it's still so prevalent today.
Yeah, for sure. Now, role models are important for anybody's career. Have you had any particular role models throughout your career, particularly women? Who you've worked with, and if you have, what did you learn from them?
Absolutely. So yeah, in my journey, there have been a lot of women as well as men in certain organization in certain time of my career who have been very motivating. I think one of the things that I remember this female leader once told to me. One of the things is uh, you have to stop apologizing for everything. Okay, so let's say even if you are being too demanding, if I as a woman I'm being too demanding, or if I'm being very upfront, or if I'm doing really good work but my guards are up because of the behavior and the attitude that's around me, stop apologizing for it. Okay, I don't think that's required. The second thing that I have really learned is that, okay, let's accept the reality. We do live in a world that, that's it's a social construct we live in, and I single-handedly cannot change it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but I think the key is to seek out for people who can enable you. So in every organization, you will have a large group of people who doesn't really align with your idea or the idea of you being a women leader. But there will
Yeah.
be certain people who do, right? And you have to identify those promoters. And this is an approach that I have learned from my mentors and have looked into it. Like, look at the people who can support you, look at the people who are your promoters and grow with them. Spending too much time uh, on really like spending too much time on the problem, like we
Mm.
know there's a problem, it will change gradually, but you don't have to spend a lot of time admiring the problem. Go to the solution bit. What can you do? How can you change it? Get into the action mode quickly.
Mm.
So these are some of the things that I have learned from a lot of mentors and leaders out there. um, the other thing is, and there are a range of Indian women leaders in the world out there.
Yeah.
Some of the names that come to my mind, like, look at Indra Nooyi, right? She did come from India. did come from that patriarchal society, and she is very open when it comes to sharing her experience,
Mm,
especially when it comes to being a woman in tech, right? So I
mm.
think these are the women who I look up to. And honestly, even at times, it doesn't have to be somebody with a very fancy title. I think for anybody, like for me, like when I look for motivation, I look for motivation inside, outside, on ground, and virtually on in the world as well. And I think for anybody who's taking an effort to break those barriers, to really move out to roles which are not really crafted for you, or which you're breaking the mold that the world really wants you to fit in.
Yeah,
I
for
think all
sure.
those women are inspiring for me. Yeah.
Yeah, you're breaking down the barriers. You're breaking down the construct that's already been put in place around, these are jobs for men, these are jobs for women,
Yeah,
because there's no such thing at the end of the day. There isn't.
exactly.
All right, lastly, Pooja, and you've covered off some great topics here, so thank you very much. You lead pro bono consulting projects to assist women in underserved communities across India. And
Yeah.
your latest gig is focusing on destigmatizing taboos around women's sexual and reproductive health across the community up there. Tell us about this work. What are the taboos and how are you bringing them out in the open to change people's attitudes?
Absolutely. So in our community, especially in the Indian community, having conversations around reproductive health or sexual health of women is considered a taboo, primarily driven by the fact that it's a part of our culture. It's patriarchal in some ways. Now, what I'm doing is there are a range of pro bono consulting firms out there. You can always uh, join one of their programs, or click in to volunteer with them, and you get to work on certain projects with them. One of the projects that I started working on was really on having conversations and facilitating on ground health workers and clinicians to destigmatize the taboos which are associated when it comes to sexual and reproductive health. Now, I think whenever you want to do anything like this, and I'm sharing this so that people who are viewing this can, if they want to do something like this, they can approach it. I think the first thing is what capability or talent or expertise that you have that you can bring to the table. So, working as a consultant, because I come from that research advisory consulting background, I knew that I can add some value here. And what we did was we worked with this non-profit, which basically they create telemedicine helplines
Yep.
to connect a lot of these communities to clinician teams. We also worked with them on their strategic roadmap, especially identifying organizations in the Asia region where they can reach out to. Organizations which have funding available, what are the selection criteria for that funding, and really creating a roadmap for them that okay, these are the organizations you should connect with, this is the value proposition, this is the field, when it comes to sexual health and wellness, this is where these organizations are behaving. Now, in my project, one of the aspects that I covered around sexual and reproductive health was menstruation. Okay, so in our community, menstruation, and it's considered a taboo. Even if you have to go to the market and buy a sanitary product, you have shopkeepers will give it to you in like a black colored polythene. It's a
Wow.
thing that happens
Yeah,
out
yeah.
there. It's
That's
disturbing.
different.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a natural phenomena. Like you can't go around and blame the women for this as well. It's
No.
how they. Yeah, so there is so much negative connotation around it, and we are just trying to change that negative version of conversations and make it a positive and a safe space for women, and also educate women. On what products to use, how to maintain your hygiene and cleanliness. It's definitely a point where, if there's a woman, they start menstruating, they go through a lot of changes. Who do they talk to about it? Lending them an ear, telling them the right sources they can reach out to when they are in these health situations. So
Yeah.
yes, we are just trying to create that positive conversation around that.
Yeah, it sounds like great work, and it certainly helps you in your day-to-day career as well, to deal with various situations as well that you encounter. It's good to do that sort of work outside of your regular daily work.
Yes, and I think for me, the most exciting part was to see the alarming statistics which were out there. Okay, especially in underserved communities, these statistics which out there, the numbers around how many people get infections when they are not following certain best practices, numbers around how many people don't even have access to sanitary products out there. It was shocking to look at those numbers, and it's a wake-up call for you as a consumer and as a part of the country that it is still happening.
Yeah.
Like on one level, we are saying we are going to be the largest economy. We are leading in IT and things, and on the other hand, to see something like this, it's like looking at two different worlds. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it gives you it makes you think that okay, what is happening, and it also enables you to do something about it. So I think that's the important part.